I've got another old friend of mine called Jane Barratt joining us. Jane is someone I met in my journey of Sapient, just like Gaston Legorbrou, who you guys met last week, where she was an MD and one of the, frankly, earliest parts of their new and burgeoning marketing team. So we had a lot of adventures together in the kind of early days of digital marketing and digital transformation. She's also a great entrepreneur. She went on to found a company called Goldbean that was like a digital advisory firm, investment advisory, I should say. And then most recently has become the chief advocacy officer of MX.com. So she's gone from marketer to financial domain wizard, and I think has got some really, really interesting perspectives on, this great period of digital transformation we're going through across a lot of different industries, and maybe some of the missed opportunities that could have happened even 10 years ago when she met. And with that, welcome to another week of OSHIP. Perfect. So Jane, I'd love to welcome you to the show.
Thanks, Freddie. It's so fun to be here.
Yeah, we do not, Jane's one of those people that I do not spend nearly enough time spending time with and catching up with. And as soon as I saw her face pop on the video today, it put me in a great mood. So I know you guys are going to get to enjoy meeting her and knowing her like I know her. But I think maybe a great place to start would be just having you explain a little bit about your background and maybe even your current role with MX.com.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a pretty strange Venn diagram. I'd say it's like multiple careers at this point, but I had set out in life to run a Madison Avenue agency. That was my big dream, which I did do, but had spent the vast majority of my time in the digital world. So once I'd kind of achieved the goals I wanted to achieve and seen enough problems that I wanted to solve, like I moved from, digital marketing, advertising into financial services, became an investment advisor, built out a digital platform, a robo-advisor, and then continued to, and it's not a funny joke, but I'll make it anyway, but I say I spent, the first half of my career taking money out of people's pockets, and I'm going to spend the second half helping people keep it in there.
It still qualifies as a decent joke. I was going to do the dun on the end there for you, but no, you still got it.
Good to know.
And what about MX.com specifically? I have to say, I'm don't necessarily come from that world. I had to go, look them up and learn a little bit about it myself. But the digital nerd in me was super geeked out on their 2-letter domain name. So you don't see that many companies who get them, and no wonder you put the .com, the domain name. They're like, yeah, we've got a 2-letter domain name.
Yeah, we do. Mm-hmm. So we are definitely in that financial technology space, providing data and software services into mostly banks and credit unions. But, it is very much a mission-driven company, empowering the world to be financially strong, like right down the fairway for, my core DNA. And then my role with MX, Chief Advocacy Officer, is kind of an awesome title because it does cover a lot of ground. But I basically spend my time with regulators, policymakers, lawmakers, really advocating for like financial health, financial strength, financial success. And basically for people to be able to access their financial data and then put it to work through great software applications that MX also builds. So half my work on that side of the world. It is really cool. And then also working with banks directly, banks, credit unions, fintech companies. We've both walked the halls of the biggest companies in the world, and it is great to be doing really impactful work at scale.
I think sometimes when you see a role like Chief Advocacy Officer, some people might go, oh, it's kind of a fancy twist on a kind of a marketing type title, but the fact that it actually has a lot to do with, policy and fighting the good fight so that people can get the best possible outcomes for their financial data is actually pretty amazing. So hats off to you. I like that. It's got to feel good.
Yeah.
How do people even meet for, I guess it's not truly lobbying, but I guess is it everyone's on Zoom just like the rest of the world, for all these meetings these days?
Yeah, it was probably my again, I've been very fortunate to always, especially in the digital space, you're always learning new things, right?
Yeah.
It's the year of search, it's the year of social, it's the year of blogs, it's the year of e-commerce, it's the year of mobile, right? There was always this, you had to expand your skill sets. And I think engaging with government players and regulators has been, a really great extra skill to add. It was a lot of walking the halls of Congress, which was awesome. I always felt like I was like on an episode of Veep doing like selfies with my
That's gotta be fun.
it was pretty awesome. But now, yes, it is 100% Zoom, teleconferences, and it's hard. I mean, we exist in a pretty complicated space, from, again, laws, privacy, security. There's always like digital currency, crypto. There's always so much going on that you end up having these very robust conversations, which are significantly easier in person, especially when you're talking about like consumer protection and financial inclusion and things like that. So it's been kind of a bummer having to do it all like through little Brady Bunch squares, but
Yeah.
better to stay safe.
So I got a good question for you. So if this, let's say hypothetically that this is the year of video conferencing, or some people might even call it the year of Zoom. Um, Look, there's clearly been video conferencing around for a long time before this year, but this was the year that it felt like this, this is mass adoption, and it's something that everyone's been talking about. I feel like you and I have seen a lot of these where people say, "Oh, it's the year of this," but I've been thinking about it, for
Everything's
example.
transformed.
Yeah, I mean, from bots, which I was, building in the early 2000s, to adopting these kind of technologies. Um, if you think back at digital transformation for yourself, and some of the journeys we've been on, I mean, does this trigger you in some way? I feel like you and I both have some frustrations with it.
um, it is very like, I'm just going to say upsetting that
Yeah.
as I'll just say an industry covering all industries, but as a society, we tend to miss the opportunities to change quickly. Right?
Yeah.
So again, I'm going to bring out all the old jokes, but I remember we used to be able to say, "Show me a website and I can draw you your org chart." Right? Because it was like, here's our products and here's our solutions. So it's just like, oh my goodness, right? And I feel like just from a business perspective, we've held on to some, it's even structural beliefs way too long, right? The
Mhm.
need to be digital first in every one of those iterations was always there, right? It was just
Mhm.
kind of relegated to a back room. So now when you see, the $1 million a year consultants out there touting digital transformation from a stage, it's like, where were you in 2008 apart from high school? But anyway.
Mhm. But yeah, this is the thing I can't quite wrap my head around is, yes, I think there's been transformation businesses, transformation consultancies, transformation agencies, whatever you want to call it. Um, I actually can't really think if there's a period where this became more of a term or a phrase, or whatever. But we've been going through this one long perpetual transformation. I guess you could argue, and there may be an internet era of it, but I think the rate at which people are adopting technology, the rate at which technology is influencing every aspect of our life is kind of increasing at a ever increasing rate. And I just don't really know when, if digital transformation, I feel like when I hear the word transformation, I implies like a start point and an end point, but it just feels like it's never going to stop
Yeah.
now. So
Yeah.
is this just a muscle that people need to adopt, whether that's at a company level or at an individual level, and people just need to prepare themselves for effectively perpetual evolution, if that makes sense.
I think it's a really good, it is a really good way to think about it, because again, we're kind of still stuck in this, post-industrial era of, I learn my domain at college, then I go and apply my domain at work, right? And
Mhm.
unless you're, I don't know, a doctor, I don't know how many other things like radically change. If you're involved in technology, your business and your work is going to change year in, year out. So having even just that base level understanding of the way that you work needs to be able to adapt, right? If you're a salesperson that had to close a deal in person, you're kind of screwed this year, right? If you're the sort of person who all the deal gets done over dinner, or I can only build relationships by buying expensive meals, like, again, you're kind of screwed this year. So I think I think, transformation also has been more polluted recently with it being almost like a code word for cost reduction, right? So how do we get rid of people and replace them with technology? What can the algorithms do that the analysts used to do? And I think that has a weird, almost very negative connotation, that instead of being excited about what technology can bring, there's an element of fear that it's like, oh, can it replace my job? How do I make myself irreplaceable if now, an algo can do what I used to do?
When you think back at, where we were with this, like say, even when we were, hanging out, and I guess we've been 2008, 2009. So let's say we're talking basically a decade back. Do you feel like there's opportunities that were missed in a more specific way, or could we have done things differently back then? To change people, to get adoption. I don't want to lead too much on that, but I mean, if we could go back 10 years, is there something we could have done, or is this a mindset issue? If you follow me.
I think there is. I think there's definitely things that could have been done, and I think as an industry to have had almost like elevated education. This is what it means, right? This isn't something that exists on a PowerPoint slide that we have to worry about maybe next year. Like, how do you bring much more, we just say like muscle to the table around converting from the way things are to the way things will be without it just being additive, right? And that goes into things like org charts, right? Where did digital end up? Whatever happened to chief digital officers? Remember that? Like, it was first it's in IT, then it was like a marketing thing without really the full, and then, oh wait, e-commerce is a thing. Oh wait, so we have to bring our bankers and payments people in now. Like, it was just this weird, just tiny little baby steps without saying, this is, look at how much money we spend in, I don't know, say retail space, right? For any commercial, any retail store. It's like, our website is actually our front door to the world. So maybe instead of just putting essentially what our billboards on Fifth Avenue for, $1 million a month, maybe we should actually really invest here. And then, it always, the money follows, though the skills follow the money, and there just wasn't enough money invested early. And it meant that their door was wide open for the big platforms to come in, whether it was ad tech platforms or Google, Facebook, to come in and just like suck up so much money because the hard work hadn't been done for people to build their own competencies and engage with an audience in a meaningful way and collect and actually use the sort of data that is meaningful to a business, instead of just using it to sell people more crap, right? And that's basically where we still are in that world of data used to sell people more crap.
I've held the chief digital officer role a couple times now.
I'm sorry, Freddie.
No. I was just about to say, no, it's good. And I've always argued, even when I had the role, that it's a role that should not exist. So I totally agree with you. And I find that, in some cases, I feel like the only times it should exist is effectively when a company, and this might have always been my position for the record, when a company needed such a severe push that they couldn't seem to figure it out, with what they had in place at the time. Now, I guess the question I've got for you, and I have my own opinions on this, that I think in the post-COVID era, do you think chief digital officers, should still exist, or if people need a big push, or do people need to take even more radical steps and say, look, there's no coddling anymore, guys. We either have a team in place that can handle this, or everyone that can't handle it's got to go. Not a bit of extreme, but I mean, what's your take on that? Because I feel like I'm going to hold my opinion for a second.
Okay. Well, I mean, this year has so radically transformed the way just work happens. I don't know if you saw the stat yesterday. I think it was Accenture or Deloitte or someone had said that their entire profit was up by like 15% just because business travel's gone away. And it was just like straight to the bottom line. So it's like, wait, why are we doing that? Like, it's just a time to rethink all of these things. Wait, can our auditors do this from home? Amazing, they can, right? So
did you say 15%, by the way?
Yeah.
That's insane. Wow.
Yeah. Should check my stats before I quote them, but yeah, it was
Yeah,
a
but
big jump.
it's a big double-digit number. I mean, it's a
Double-digit number purely because of the lack of business travel. So I think, I mean, going into 2021, which will most likely still be extremely disruptive year, it would be good for like almost like a zero-based budget approach. If we were building this business from scratch today, like where would we invest? And like if you need to bring in a chief digital officer, and you would have found this, Freddie, it's a competitive, now it's like it's an eat what you kill because you got to get your budget, right? So it's now an actual competitive position versus what is the right thing for our customer, what's the right thing for our industry, you know, what will help us, you know, compete better. And it's by having better engagement, better support, better tools for your customers, regardless of what business you're in. So if you're really rethinking that, then you are rethinking things like in-person meetings and travel and how deals are done. Like it is an opportunity, again, a very hard won opportunity, but it is a good opportunity for business to go, wait, what do we actually need? And can we have people spending less time in meetings? Because we can all track now exactly how much time we're spending on Zoom, less time in meetings and more time like thinking, engaging, talking to customers, you know, building, you know, all of the things that the tech companies did a great job of in the early days, like, you know, Google's 20% rule, right? This would feel like if we've all got, I mean, it's probably close to 20% of our working lives back because we're not schlepping out for lunch, we're not commuting, you're not getting, you know, caught up as much as it is great.
You've set me up for so many thoughts, but I mean, just going on a quick list. So on the work load side, you know, we've been completely virtual for Community Collective for 5 years. So you know, this we see very much, I think, the impact of what happens when you're not, you know, not going into the office every day. You can save a bunch of time, but I think a lot of it has to do with the personality. We're also seeing some people that they're like, oh, this is great. I'm not driving, which is when I used to listen to the radio and call my friends. And now I'm just packing 2 more hours of work in a day. So we do see sometimes a bit of that as well. People that struggle to separate the two. Going back to the chief digital officer conversation there for a minute, you know, it's interesting when I've done these roles in the past. Typically, there's been this kind of feeling within the company of saying, look, we've got some really incredible people. They understand certain aspects of our business. We think in a way like no one else. They have some deficiencies around digital. Can you come fill that gap? Because we believe so much in the rest of the team that we want you to fill the gap so that we can make it work. And it's done with good intent. And I historically have always supported that. And you know me to be a pretty nice, big-hearted guy. So what I'm going to say in a second probably seems a little more aggressive than usual for me. But if a client or P firm or any of the types of folks we work with had come to me today and suggested this, my more aggressive advice would probably be if you need to pan out your people, they've got to go. And you know, if you think you can retrain them, wonderful, but they probably shouldn't be in leadership roles because you have to completely own a master of technology in this world. You know, the last year, you know, people are arguing what a 3 to 10 year acceleration of technology advancement and evolution in 1 year in terms of consumer behavior, customer behavior, you know, just all the other cascading impacts this has had in the way that we work, the way that we do business, the way that we even interact, love, live, whatever together. You know, if you haven't got someone at the helm who can evolve and constantly evolve, like we talked about earlier, I think you're in real trouble. And you know, if you look at some of these digital companies that you mentioned a second ago, who effectively eaten everyone's lunch over the last 10 years, it's because they had already transformed, and these guys are working on the next transformation when everyone else is trying to figure out how to use bloody Zoom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just think, and I would argue, if you look at, you know, at the kind of laws of technology's impact on marketing and business, that because it's accelerating, everyone knows that the acceleration, you know, the technology rate is accelerating constantly, then the gap is going to get even bigger if you can't figure it out really quickly. And that's just scare the hell out of a bunch of people. And if that doesn't stick them into action, I don't know what will at this point.
And it's a stat that I usually bring up when I, either present to a big group or talk publicly, is the fact, everyone says like data is the new oil, right? And so I live in the data world now, and digital, it's almost like digital is electricity, and now data is the new digital, if that makes sense.
By the way, I want it on record that I had that on a slide at a Ken Lyons presentation in 2009.
A record acknowledges Freddie Laker.
You and I have been so far ahead of this for a long time, and it's just kind of wild.
So. Oh no, but I mean, here's the thing that all you have to do, and I do have this slide, which is a side by side of the collective market cap of the top 10 companies in the world in 2010, or like 2009 to 2019, right? And what has happened from 2009, all the oil companies have dropped off and all of the data-driven companies have come in, right? And have taken up even more, right? You still have, the tech, you can call it tech, but it basically is harvesting data, right? It's harvesting and selling data and using the, using the proceeds to, again, sell more crap. So, you got Google, you got Netflix, you got Facebook, you've got, Alibaba, like these are Amazon, right? Those 5 companies have basically displaced in market cap all of the big oil and all of that institutional wealth that had been built over generations. So it is, again, no one would ever question the term digital literacy, right? Everyone's digitally literate. We're all great with our Zoom, right? And now there is, I think, this next gen of, okay, are you data literate? Oh, that's not my job. That's the data scientist's job. It's like, we're doing it again. We're doing exactly what we did last time, which is relegating a strategic imperative to backroom.
So if you had to think about maybe some changes that you'd love to see change in the short term, when you think about where all this is heading the second time around, because this is feeling oddly familiar again. Is there any thoughts about maybe directional shifts in terms of digital transformation over the next year or two?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes to budget and structure, right? Are we investing, again, cross categories? Are we investing as an industry, on a country level, on a category level, to not just kind of like future proof? Right now, it still feels like you're just patching holes, right? Oh, add that, right? Are we actually investing in where the industry is going? And all you have to, again, look at the benefit of being an investment advisor. When you look at like the S&P 500 or like Fortune 50, like they change constantly, and that rate of change is now down to, I think, you're on and off in 13 years now as sort of a big public company, because there's just been such acceleration. And so, if the way that money is invested isn't like, a 2% R&D budget, but like a zero base, what do we need to invest to keep our business thriving 15 years from now versus the next quarter, I think you'd see really different outcomes. And I mean, it's such an extraordinary time from an economic level, right? With Fed money flowing in, with like all the bets are off, the market thriving when people have stopped spending, like the rules have changed so much. Why aren't business rules changing? Why are we showing up next year with the same damn org chart that we had 20 years ago? And so that really feels like the way forward is not just, and you would have remembered this, the early days of social. You just hire young people because they get social. They couldn't talk brand, right? They couldn't do crisis management. They know how to open a Twitter account. Come on.
They're like, you've logged into Facebook? Excellent. You're hired. That's pretty funny. So when you think about this investment, I mean, look, yes, there's going to be technology platforms and systems and tools that people need to adopt. I can't help but feeling like it keeps coming back down to people. And yes, look, people need to reward people that are loyal and are passionate about their company. What happens to people that are digital laggards? I mean, it's a challenging. And and the good news is I don't necessarily believe anymore that digital proficiency at this point is an age thing. Yes, there may be. I think some people position it as ageism or whatever. I've come to accept that it's ultimately just down to the people. being interested in learning, and some people are not, and some people are.
And being curious and being able to learn on your own time. And I think that's, if you want digital training for your company, you should get fired, right? You should know how technology works and the impact on your business. But yeah, it's tricky.
And if you weren't kind of covering, let's say, people who've been in the industry for a long time, let's talk about young people for a moment. So you're now, let's say you're, just starting your career the last 2 or 3 years, came right in the middle of the pandemic. Yay, congrats. It keeps it exciting for you. Any kind of advice or guidance for the types of things you think young professionals should be thinking about?
I mean, I think it's always been true to, be curious, self-teach, be helpful to someone. Like everyone gets so caught up in, I have to work for the big logo, or I have to, check boxes. But it can't be true anymore. People are going to have multiple careers. I mean, people have multiple careers at the same time now with multiple income streams, just because there's so many more options. So I think the core truths of, it frankly doesn't matter where you start. It's as long as you've got a path to follow that is always evolving. Again, unless you're a doctor, you don't want to make too many mistakes, as you know. But having this idea of really looking to the future, where it's going, immersing yourself in it, being genuinely curious, and not like checkerbox curious, genuinely curious. But I mean, one of my core passions has been, and I won't tell the long story, but I moved from Asia. As I spent the first part of my career in Asia and then moved to New York, and just the cultural whiplash from going from Australia to Asia to New York, from a money perspective, right? I showed up in Asia as the typical like Victorian thinking, very taboo driven. We don't talk about money, to talking about bonuses, how much things cost, what you're investing in, and it meant that I left Asia very financially literate, and knowing and having zero shame around asking some really key money questions and knowing what to look for. And so I'd always had this follow the money, right? You always just got to follow the money, right? In business, at home, wherever it is. And I think that's still a huge missing piece from career advice, understanding how your company makes money, how you contribute to it, how you should be, what's your worth relative to that contribution. It's always like, what's your negotiating tactic to get a raise? It's like, well, just go show your worth, do the math, like it's, and then work on the tactics. But you can't have good tactics without doing the math. So yeah, I mean, it's a long, I could talk about advice for younger people. And I graduated in a recession, and it sucks. I got to say, I had shitty jobs early on. Assume I can swear. So, yeah, it's just like, and just know that not every shitty job will be your last job. You will go on to other.
Yeah, guaranteed, for the record. Someone asked me a similar question this recently as well, and it really got me thinking. And the place that I ended up in, that I think is quite interesting, was a lot of people were talking about being threatened by AI, and that replacing jobs. You could argue, in particular, maybe in the finance world, given that such a kind of intersection of data and AI is obviously ripe territory for automation and algorithms and things like that. Worth noting, the AI word is thrown around a lot more than than actually being real AI. But anyway, my point was that I think that when you speak about being curious, I would add to that, be bold and unafraid. And my argument for the future with how AI is going to impact some of these jobs is, I don't think that AI is going to replace roles. I think AI is going to augment humans and make them superhuman. And I'm not talking about Terminator-esque cybernetic implants or anything yet. But I think what I am talking about is this idea of using AI-based tools that require a human to collaborate with them to make them effective, but that might make you 5x or 10x faster, smarter, more accurate, or whatever. And so I think when you start seeing people go into, they should learn about AI tools, they should find AI tools, hell, they should bring AI tools into their own job if their boss hasn't even found them, and say, hey,
Seriously.
get me this. I'll be, I'll be 10x the person I am now. And I think
Yeah.
the firms that start leveraging those kind of tools as a force multiplier, or like, that's going to be what's really interesting, because not everything's, some companies are about cost cutting. Other companies are about going, hey, how can I take what I have and do a hell of a lot more with it and use that to eat my competition's lunch. And I think that's, quite interesting. Hey, so I want to be, conscious of time. There's so many other things I wanted to get into with you, but I knew this digital transformation subject was something that you and I were gonna geek out on, and frankly could have talked for another 2 hours on easily. But I'd love to learn, in your current role, I was really caught my attention with this chief advocacy officer concept. Is there anything that you're just really passionate about right now, or I've known you quite a long time, anything that you're learning about right now or immersing yourself in that just kind of does it for you, keeps your head screwed on during this crazy COVID madness?
Yeah, I mean, again, like, my sort of mission for myself is how to help people engage with their money in a better way, right? And people are really struggling right now. It's like this really is a tale of two countries in terms of, if you've got a job, you're saving more money. You're actually, because of extra stimulus payments. On average, America is better off financially this year than last year, which is a complete misconception, because it just means people that were doing okay are doing better, but people who are not doing okay are falling off a cliff. And so it's not that one is more important than the other. Everyone wants to be able to move their financial lives forward, but I think the multidimensional aspects around just financial strength and what that means to an economy, right? Do we want to be and I'll say collectively, as we're both sort of expats, do you want to be an empire in decline because the half of the country can't feed themselves? Like, it doesn't make sense, and the other half of the country can amass more and more assets. So I think working with the biggest financial institutions who have great trust with their customers, and trying to get them moved from a product-based outlook, we've got to get share of wallet, sell more credit cards, sell more loans, into an outcome-based outlook, right? If a bank could promise you they're going to make you, move you up the ladder financially, we're going to work with you to do that, you would go with them tomorrow, right? All of the tools are placed to help you get there. It's just that data is used to sell stuff versus help you. So that, and again, it's the regulatory perspective. It's working with the banks, it's working with the technology, working with product designers. I have a whole education piece of my life. I've got a partnership with LinkedIn Learning where I do financial education. So I get real-time feedback from all over the world every day of what people are thinking about for their money, the questions that are asked, the comments I get. So it's a fascinating place to be, in the middle of all of those concentric circles. So yeah, that's what gets me up.
You made a reference. You called the Venn diagram out earlier, and you kind of referenced the concentric circles again. So in my mind, I'm charting all these different things I know you've been involved in, from agency life to digital world to finance to even, like you said, I think, to even financial education. You're a very ambitious and very clever person. If you wanted to, is there any kind of other role or industry that you would love to explore one day, not to scare your current employers?
No, I think it has been such a blessing to have been, getting into digital so early. And it literally, because I don't know about your story, but I was like the data nerd. I was in direct marketing and data, and I was like, well, I guess they're kind of techie. I guess they can do it. And I remember going to things like CNET, teaching them how dynamic HTML worked, like really aging myself now. But it is it's like, what's next? And being able to forge that path, I think, is what is so incredibly exciting. And I think the benefit of being in marketing is that you were never in one industry, right? We worked with cars and CPG and booze, and you were in all of the industries.
That's a nice way to think about it. I've never thought about it like that, because it is a bunch of really random random industry aside, I've learned, and I'm not sure my, supporting the private equity world has made it any less weird. In fact, I'd argue I'm even more obscure and niche industries now. So yeah, a wealth of strange and useless or semi-useless knowledge anyway.
It always comes together. The dots, I think, and that's again probably going back to advice as well, is things that you think are useless at the time, years later you're like, oh, I know a lot about this. Who knew?
Yeah. It makes nothing else. It makes for an ability to have a lot of different conversations with a lot of different folks and find lots of different subjects interesting. So I think people are always kind of baffled by some of the strange things I seem to know a couple things about.
Well, and the confidence to present them as well. I think you're a humble guy. You're not going to come out and say I know everything about private equity, but you're going to know enough to be able to get a foothold in and then build from there. And I think confidence is a huge part of careers that people don't talk about.
Well, I'm gonna throw you a curveball as our closing thought. So I was sitting here thinking, first off, how much I'm enjoying chatting with you and how much I miss seeing your face and
I miss seeing you too.
Your lovely accent. But we'll play a game. If this was the last time we spoke, what would you say to me?
I would say that I've worked with thousands of people, thousands in my career, and you have too, right? And there are special people that come your way, and you are one of them. So I am glad that we've had this time together. But it's also, you never know where these moments of delight will come from. And it is one of the best things about a working life is getting to meet awesome people like you, Freddie.
Oh, I feel the same way, for the record. So that's awesome. Thanks, Jane. That made my day. Well, now all of you at home, that a little tear ran down your face of that touching moment, as just want to broaden the emotional spectrum you feel here when tuning into OSHIP. Sometimes you laugh with us, sometimes you weep with us, and now you've witnessed true love. Sorry. Exactly. I want to thank everyone that's tuned in today. Jane, I want to thank you for showing up and answering questions and giving us some insight into your life and the digital transformation world. It's always wonderful to have another great expert on the show. If you're watching the show right now and you're seeing us live on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or any of the places we're broadcasting, please give us a like, give us a thumbs up, share us, help spread the word. It's the best thing you can do to try and support the show. And we're so appreciative of you tuning in every single week. And I'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Freddie.